I am Thor Jourgensen, city editor of the Daily Item. We are having a post-city election conversation with James Carrigan, local attorney, but even more importantly, political guru. You've held elective office, been involved in a lot of campaigns that I can remember, and we appreciate your insight and analysis today. Two guys who are young, who are labor guys, who by all accounts really worked hard, swept into office last night. I'm talking about Brian LaPierre and Jay Walsh in Ward 7. Give me your thoughts on that.
Well, I think they both ran a classic campaign. And by a classic campaign, I mean they went out, first of all, they both have great personal qualities. They're both charming, they're both dogged, and they're both smart. But beyond that, if you have all those qualities and just sit at home and hope to win, you're not going to win. They knocked on doors, they identified a vote, they pulled their vote out yesterday, and it's as simple as that. And they raised money, and they have a lot of friends. But a lot of candidates have a lot of friends, but they don't do anything with it.
Walsh surprised me a little. I thought that was going to come down to a race where a few dozen votes separated Brian Field and Walsh. They both seemed to be guys who had bases. Okay, they were newcomers, but I thought they were both strong candidates. But Walsh ran away with it.
He did, because of what I just said. I saw numbers at 4 o'clock, and those numbers said to me that Walsh was going to run away with it.
In school committee, where we had 10 candidates, we saw a longtime veteran, Donna Capola, top the ticket. The newcomers, Jared Nicholson, Lorraine Gately, are in the middle. I think they were 3-4. So they didn't really make the kind of splash, really, that, say, LaPierre made. But let me ask you a question that pertains to, Jim, to at-large, well, the council as a whole and school committee. What impact do newcomers coming in have on changing the focus or the dynamic of the way an elected body works?
Well, that's up to the newcomer. You know, we did a show last night on Lynn Cable about the election, and someone suggested that maybe the newcomer should just be quiet. And I don't believe that at all. If you've got thoughts, speak about them. And it's the power of your words and your ideas. And if you've got good ideas, try to get them implemented. I mean, you know, some people are really thoughtful, creative people, and they can have an impact, a huge impact on the city. So I think that's going to happen next year, by the way.
Do you see new agendas, new directions for both bodies emerging as a result of the infusion in both bodies, 2 new people into the 11-member council, 2 new people onto the 6-member school committee, with the addition of the mayor as its chairman?
Right. I don't know what the direction will be, but I do see new energy, and I think they're going to get creative. Last night we invited, on our TV show, we invited all of the candidates to come down. And the only one who came down, and it was too late, we had already wrapped the show up, was Brian LaPierre. He has great political instincts, and he has great energy, and he's going to bring that energy and those instincts to the Lynn City Council. And he's got a great body to work with, so he's not going to lead it. You know, it's very capably led by Dan Cahill, but he'll play a role in that city council. He's not going to sit there and act like a rookie.
You know what I heard people shouting at the Knights of Pythias last night?
What?
Brian for mayor.
I read that in your paper this morning. I have no idea about that. I mean, you know, you don't know what the mayor's going to do. You don't know what Brian's going to do. But if he decides to run, he's obviously a formidable campaigner.
2017 is a way away. But let's look back. How would you think of an election that you would compare this election to? Draw some contrast to maybe past elections, if you can, please.
I thought this election ran very smooth. You know, let me talk about a point, if I may. We have a new polling place at the museum where Drew Russo is. And I went there. I wanted to see how it was working out. And it was as smooth as silk. We had an election in 1971 where the election commission lost the ballots. there weren't enough ballots. This is, in a way, a humorous story. Patsy Caggiano was mayor, and he bought 5 minutes of TV on Channel 4, and he kept saying, "Where are the ballots? Where are the ballots?" And he pulled out his briefcase. He says, "I have the ballots." He dumped a bunch of ballots on the table. So we had to have another election. And Patsy got elected that year, and that was probably one of the things that helped him. But to go to yesterday's election, I have the highest regard for Mary Audley. I think she runs a great election commission over there. She moved the polling place because she was required to do so by law. Mary's very intelligent. She's very honest. There was no games there. And so I know there's a friend of mine who's kind of taking shots at her because he's talking about voters being disenfranchised. That's absolutely not so. It's not a far walk or ride to the museum to go vote. In Alabama, this year, in Alabama, they closed, first of all, they require picture ID to vote, licenses. And then they closed, I think, 39 registry of motor vehicles where you could get a picture ID in black and low-income neighborhoods. They're trying to suppress the vote. They've been doing it for a couple of 100 years. So I don't think we in Lynn should complain about having a hard time walking to the museum. You can call almost any candidate and say, "I need a ride to go vote," and they'll pick you up.
It's in their interest getting you there.
Yeah, of course it is, yeah.
Let's talk about the voters. 22% of 48,000 people roughly show up and exercise their democratic right. What's your takeaway from that in terms of the city election?
I think it's awful, and we were talking about that before we went on camera. And you said, what can the item do about it? What can we do about it? I'm racking my brains. I spent, as you know, I spent my whole life trying to get votes out, and you want to get enough to win, obviously. But I'm very interested in seeing a high turnout. In Ward 4, the turnout was, I just did the math just before we went on the air, 14.6% yesterday. And that's been a trend for a while. Now, people say that Ward 1 has all the power. All the rich people are in Ward 1, they have the power. I hope there are a lot of rich people in Ward 1, there are everywhere, but maybe not as many as there should be. But they have more political power because they vote more. They have the highest turnout percent and the highest numbers. So it's only logical, maybe it seems unfair or whatever, but it's only logical that if you're a candidate and you want to win an election, you're going to go and meet with the Ward 1 voters first because they vote. And then you're going to go to Ward 2, Precinct 1, Ward 2, Precinct 2, and Ward 7 because they vote. So I did this with a group last year after the election. And I showed them that if people in Ward 4 had just increased their numbers fairly significantly, they would have outvoted Ward 1 and they would have had a bigger influence in that election.
Let's cover a little of ground on that. Tell me if I'm wrong in these parallels, but in Ward 5, where Diana Chakutis, winning election to a second term, obviously drew a big vote out of Pine Hill. Interestingly enough, first-time candidate, fresh out of college, Marvin Road Hippolyte, won, I think, 2-3 by just a couple of votes, but nevertheless, he grabbed the precinct on the first time out.
I was surprised by that. And I don't think I've ever met him. I know most of these candidates. That tells you something. And then I found out later that he worked in the Obama campaign in New Hampshire. So he probably has those political instincts, like Brian LaPierre does. And he's a young guy, and that's a significant vote against an incumbent. So I would keep my eye on him. I mean, you as a reporter, and I'll bet he'll be back. And I don't know him.
I guess the point I'm getting slowly around to is, just as Pine Hill is a solid base for a candidate running in Ward 5, by I believe the Highlands is really the core for Ward 4. Is that pretty true? And you have to win the Highlands to win the ward?
No, I think for down by the beach is bigger turnout precinct, bigger numbers.
South of Lewis Street.
Yes, yeah.
Let's get to the sort of unspoken, if you will, subject coming out of the council election. There is potential talk we could see a shift in the legislative landscape for the city in terms of who represents us in the state legislature. If that were to happen, that would probably spark interest among councilors to potentially run for a seat. And we had two veteran politicians finish 5th and 6th in the at-large race. Rick Starbird, school committee man, and former councilor Tim Phelan. One vote separates them for 5th place.
Ooh, I knew that.
One vote separates them for 5th place, and I believe the charter requires or says, I got to check the timing on it, that if someone leaves, number 5 strolls in.
I mentioned that awful word last night, recount, not anticipating a recount at all. But based on what you just said, I bet there will be a recount for that 5th position. Because if somebody leaves the council, one of the councils at large leaves, the 5th place person.
And one of those guys, both veterans, they know how it works, wants to be positioned if that is the possibility.
So there will be a recount for sure, I'll bet.
I'll pay attention to that.
Yeah.
What else can we cover? We haven't talked enough about school committee. It's interesting that the newcomers landed right in the middle of the pack, and that two veteran committee members, Carrasco and Coppola, buttressed respectively the tail end of the voting, 6th place for Carrasco, 1st place for Coppola. What does that say about the direction? There's a lot of challenges and problems facing the schools.
Oh, there are. And that's Carrasco Maria's a friend of mine. That's her the 3rd time in a row she's placed 6th. So she's got it's not easy to get elected, as you know. You cover these things all the time. And Donna Coppola campaigns very hard between elections. And she was fortunate enough to live in Ward 7, where the big race was yesterday. So anybody who had like John Ford had a connection to Ward 7, they got buoyed by that turnout caused by Walsh and Brian Fields. I have the highest regard for Kathy Latham. I think she's doing everything she can to run the school department. It's not easy. I mean, we had a meeting a couple of weeks ago, and I asked her how many languages are spoken in the Lynn school system. I mean, if you get 25 different languages, how would you like to be? I mean, I was a teacher for a short time. How would you like to walk into a classroom where the kids don't speak English? I mean, how does it work? And they make it work, and it's a struggle. But you can't criticize the Lynn school system or the Lynn school committee because of the diversity we have in Lynn. That's a strength, and we're going to build on it, and I think it will work out. So I met Jared Nicholson during this campaign, and he's very well educated. He went to Princeton. He graduated from Princeton. He graduated from Harvard Law School, and he's a very nice guy. He's got a lot of energy, and I think you'll see that energy show up on the Lynn School Committee. And like almost all of these candidates, he has, they run to serve. You know, a lot of people don't respect politicians, but they run to serve. And he's already started a wrestling program at Marshall Middle School. So, and they don't do it just because they want to get elected. Bobby Tucker is probably a great example. He hasn't been in elective office in a long time, yet he serves as the chair of the new Cable TV Commission. He was president of the Lynn Beach, Nahant Beach.
Friends of Lynn and Nahant Beach.
And they did a great job. I mean, you know, we all appreciate walking that beach, and he and the others, Ed Lynch for one, did a great job of keeping that beach clear. And he's been on, you know, he's chair of the Human Rights Commission in Lynn. So politicians, they like to serve, whether it's in office or not, and they do it for free usually, and so I respect them.
What is it we love about politics in Lynn? I was in the ground floor corridor right outside the clerk's office last night at 8 o'clock. There's 30 people there from all neighborhoods of the city. Everyone's pumped up waiting for the results. There's something about this city and politics.
Well, it's exciting. I mean, for some of us, like you and me and Drew Russo. Drew, I went down to the museum yesterday. We get excited just by looking at voters and ballot boxes, seriously. But it's not for everybody. I mean, that 14% turnout in Ward 4 is dismal. And what can we do about it? We should look at it. One of the things I was going to suggest, I'm going to do it myself anyway, let's do some focus groups with people who didn't vote. And let's try to find out. You know, there's a lot of cliches, oh, they're all crooks and, you know, they can't do anything anyway. How do you expect to get good teaching or good whatever? By the way, I think we get good teaching. But if they're complaining about the school department or about taxes or anything else, they should get involved and they should learn. I mean, the item last week provided all those interviews with all of the candidates. There was no excuse this year to not understand who felt, who believed what, and then act on it.
This has been a post-city election discussion with political wise man James Carrigan. I am Thor Jourgensen, city editor of the Daily Item. Please read the Daily Item and itemlive.com. Thanks.